Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta. Tuesday morning, December the 7th. I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. Chat room's open. I did pop the link in there to what we want to look at this morning. It's an article dealing with anger management from Anger Resources, www.angerresources.com, ANGERESOURCES. That's a great website. Dave Decker and Michael Obsatz put together a whole website on anger management. They both specialize in the field and are therapists and have been working with people regarding anger management and domestic violence, domestic abuse, and whatnot. That's an awesome website. We're going to finish up with this article and then move on because we could spend probably 6 months in this looking around at this website. There's so much information there. I'm going to actually continue to read through the stuff myself. I hope everybody will go check it out. It's great information. But I want to finish looking at this one article and then we'll move on. But it's a great website and I just think the information is so good. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'm not a counselor or therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows and just to be another voice for people, to speak out against abuse and to stand up for children's rights and to be another voice for survivors out here, you know. And so you have to listen at your own discretion because I'm talking about all the different topics that are related to abuse, you know, and abuse is a sensitive topic. So, you know, you have to know what you feel comfortable listening to, and you have to know, you know, what might trigger you, you know what I mean? So listen at your own discretion, and if the show makes you uncomfortable, you know, just don't listen to it, right? And if you're a young person under the age of 18, make sure you have permission to listen to my show from an adult, somebody who hopefully you have somebody who cares about you and your family, or somebody like a coach, a mentor, a teacher, someone who's older, like an adult who can help you make the decision whether you should be listening, because my shows are ultimately about stopping child abuse and you know, surround the issues that surround child abuse, but there's a lot of adult content on my shows, and children have the right to protection at all times. So you have to get into a habit of, you know, letting adults know or someone know what you're doing online, just so you can protect yourself, because there are a lot of crazy, sick people out there who are online trying to get a hold of children at all times. And so, you know, young people may or may not know this. So children under the age of 18 have permission to listen to my show. Thanks very much. So we'll get right into this topic here this morning. And this is Dave Decker wrote this article. Michael Obsatz has lots and lots of stuff on this website as well, article after article. They both do. But we were focusing mainly on Dave Decker stuff, but Michael Obsatz has some awesome stuff too. And so I hope everybody will go read through both sets of all these articles. It might take you a while because there's a lot there, but it's all very, very good. And they both really explain a whole lot about anger and why people, you know, behave the way they do, and the anger is natural, normal, but not being abusive, you know what I mean? We just need to learn to be assertive, not abusive, or not passive and stuff the anger. There's ways to handle it. So, you know, there's good information there from both of those gentlemen, Dave Decker and Michael Obsatz. So I hope everybody will go and look. So I want to look at this article called The Foundations of Effective Anger Management, Where to Start If You Want to Change What You Do with Your Anger, by Dave Decker. And that's from www.angerresources.com. So I'm just reading right from the page, and you can go there to the links in the chat room. And it says, sometimes it seems like anger is all around us. We continually hear stories from the media about domestic abuse, road rage, gang violence, and school shootings. Unfortunately, this type of behavior is not so unusual in our society. And then he says, but is this really anger? And he says, I think not. After working with men, women, couples, and families over the past 18 years in my practice as a psychologist, all too often we become very confused about what it really means to experience and express the emotion of anger, to exchange explosive and disrespectful anger that has become a problem in your life. It is critical to understand what anger is and what anger isn't, and to learn how to address anger that does arise in a more effective way. So it says, your anger does not have to be a destructive and hurtful force, is what Dave Decker says here. So it does not have to create shame and remorse, destroy relationships and intimacy, and create negative emotional and physical consequences on the job, in your car, with your health, and in other important areas of your life. So he says here, rather, it can be an energizing and useful force, helping you to build self-confidence, self-esteem, and self-respect, and assisting you in actually enhancing your relationships with others The way it goes depends on how you actually handle your anger. So he says here, most clients who come to see me about their anger say that they want me to get rid of or eliminate all the anger that they feel. But that is just not the way it works. When hostile, cynical, and disrespectful thoughts and behaviors have been a significant part of your life, it is unrealistic and perfectionistic to think that you are all of a sudden going to become a mellow and laid-back individual. So he says here, I've had personal experience with anger and issues of my own throughout the course of my life. I will never be that mellow or laid-back person. There will always be a certain intensity to the way I say and do things and the way I live my life. But what I have done, what many of my clients have done, and what you can also do, is to learn to recognize and handle your anger more effectively when it does arise. Developing this ability makes day-to-day living a whole lot easier for you and the people around you. This article will give you some things to think about and some concrete ideas about how to recognize and intervene in the anger you feel. So, he says he's had problems with his own anger his whole life, and that to think that he's never going to change, to think that he wouldn't have the potential, to eliminate all this same types of anger issues in his own life is just unrealistic, and that really it's just all how we handle it, it's all how the choices that we make. And that's why people, think, they just think that anger happens just because it's either supposed to, or people get angry and lash out at their family members just because, they have the right to do that or something. And actually, no, we're all responsible for our own behavior. And if we're abusive because of our anger issues, even though, all we have to do is sit back and think about what we're doing first before we lash out at people or become abusive, we can still be assertive. We don't need to be abusive because anger is normal and it's going to happen. So that's what Dave Decker's saying here. It's going to happen. But it's how we choose to handle it. That's what's going to make the difference, whether we're going to be abusive or whether we're just going to be passive and stuff our anger, let everybody walk all over us. That's no good either, right? We need to be able to learn how to be assertive without being abusive. And I think that's, he's got some great articles about that as well on here. So he says the place to start to modify what you do with your anger, involves the basic foundations of effective anger management. He says building a solid house requires a good foundation. So does understanding and changing the way you experience and express your anger. Below are 13 critical concepts that need to be understood and accepted if anger is to be effectively regulated in your day-to-day life. So he has 13 foundations here. He says the first foundation is anger is a normal, natural human emotion. The second one is the second foundation. Anger is not the same thing as hostility, cynicism, withdrawal, aggression, abuse, or violence. So it's not the same as any of those things. Anger is not those things, right? The third foundation, how we express anger, is learned primarily from important people in our childhood. The fourth foundation, both men and women receive strong cultural messages about how to express anger. The fifth foundation, we need to be honest with ourselves about our anger and how it affects us and others. And the sixth foundation, anger and other feelings are our responsibility. Is not the truth. The seventh foundation, how we express our anger, is a choice. And the eighth foundation, acting out or ventilating anger is not helpful in effectively addressing and discharging it. Some people might disagree with this stuff, but we'll read through the ninth foundation. We often lapse into ineffective and destructive patterns and dances when expressing anger. And the 10th foundation, handling anger poorly can create significant consequences in many areas of your lives, and that's a fact. I mean, I've quit jobs over anger, good jobs that I, sort of later on was thinking that was kind of stupid. But I didn't handle my own anger properly because I was angry at some of the people that, at work for whatever reason, and would leave these really good jobs just because I just didn't want to deal with the confrontation, I usually generally made a big scene and then, trying to demand apologies from people that I felt really owed me an apology. And it's really because of the way I was brought up. And I just can't take any more abuse from people, even though I know that I'm going to be subjected to all kinds of ridiculous treatment by bosses and other coworkers and everybody else, because people are abusive, see. And, whether it's in your own family or out on the street or in the workplace, you're always going to run into somebody who's going to think that they have the right to push you around or to make you feel bad, which is absolutely ridiculous, but it's true. And, we just need to learn how to be assertive without becoming, abusive ourselves, or quitting jobs just because of that. We should be allowed to stand up for ourselves and still keep the job. It's just absolutely ridiculous. The 11th foundation, handling anger effectively can create self-esteem, self-respect, self-confidence, and the potential for trust and intimacy in relationships. And then he says the 12th foundation, we can in fact actually change the way we experience and express our anger. The 13th foundation, changing what we do with our anger is an ongoing and lifelong process. And so we'll start right at the top here, but this is quite a lengthy article here, so I don't know how far we'll get through here today, but definitely take a look at the first few anyway. And he says here, we'll start with number 1, and that's the first foundation. Anger is a normal, natural human emotion. In reality, anger is an integral part of your humanity, absolutely necessary for your emotional and physical well-being. Anger is a fact of life and was part of our survival as a species in earlier times, he says. How you handle your anger determines whether it is a helpful or destructive force in your life. So anger can be appropriate and positive whenever it is expressed respectfully and effectively. He says the wonderful thing about your anger is that it can truly be a source of discovery for you. It can tell you that something important is going on within or around you that needs to be attended to. It's like anger kind of alerts us. It's like a sign that, okay, something's wrong. Like generally people don't just become angry for no reason. You know what I mean? If somebody's mistreating us or somebody is doing something we think is wrong, we might become angry. We might become angry if things, too many things are going on in our life, like the house needs, let's say people own a home and too many repairs need to be done and the roof starts leaking and, there's no money to repair that stuff. That can cause people to be frustrated and then they can become angry. It just alerts us that things are going on. But we don't have to become abusive about it, or fly off the handle about it. It's just it's something that we are going to have to deal with. There's always going to be something that's going to cause people to be angry, And it says that it can clarify and tell you who you are, what you like and dislike, what your personal limits and boundaries are. When a core hurt from the past has been activated by a person or situation in the present, when something is threatening to you, when you have compromised yourself in some way, or when an injustice has been done to you or someone you care about. So that can all be, alert us that there's something wrong. That's why anger is kind of, it's just normal, right? It's going to happen. Anger can also be a catalyst, a tool to promote assertiveness and personal empowerment, and a motivator when you use it to move toward effective and productive problem solving, limit setting, and conflict resolution. That's what I'm really interested in, because anger to me was explosive and violent when I was young, growing up in this abusive home, right? So I associate anger with violence, right? And so whenever if I'm angry about something that somebody's done to me, let's say even on the job, and I just don't like how something has gone at work, I have a real hard time with confrontation, because to me anger is violence. See, and my reaction is to either take it and just sit there and not say anything, and just keep taking it until I just blow up, right? Or to get extremely irate and start demanding things from people that I probably will never get satisfaction from. But then because I do that, because I've had to be involved in the confrontation period with somebody at work, whether it's a boss or the regional, vice president, which I have, had these issues before, then all of a sudden I can't work there anymore, because it's almost like it's just too much for me. So that's where this whole conflict resolution stuff comes in really handy for people who have been abused and who were, grew up around a lot of anger, and people who did not know how to control, who didn't want to control their own anger issues, right? So because my parents did not show us any positive, because they didn't know, or honestly, I believe it was because they really didn't know. They were both brought up themselves in very ignorant, abusive homes, and they didn't know themselves any other way to handle things, right? Very ignorant, And so they didn't show us any good stuff, right? So we had now, as adults, have to go out and learn how to do this. Now, I wish I would have learned how to do this a long time ago, right? Because, I could have saved myself a whole lot of problems and, been a whole lot better off for it. But it's better to start now than just never, right? And so, I mean, I actually want to take courses on conflict resolution and things like this because it's so important to me to be able to assert myself without feeling that, okay, once I've asserted myself, then I have to leave because I can't deal with the consequences of the whole thing. You know what I mean? And that's just my inner child screaming out, going, we're not safe, we're not safe. That's what that's all about. It's like, you know, in my home, if we spoke up about anything that we didn't like or didn't think that was good going on in the home, we were either told that our thoughts and opinions didn't count and that we didn't matter and that we better shut up or we'd be beaten, or we would be beaten. There wouldn't be any warning. It would just be like, okay, you shut your mouth, and if you said anything, then you'd be beaten. So, like, to me, you know, if you grow up like that, you know, it sort of sets the stage for how you will handle things as an adult, right? You know, then confrontation of any kind becomes a problem, right? And for me, confrontation is a huge issue. So, you know, I'm kind of, you know, trying to learn how to work through this, and I really want to take some not anger management, but, you know, some courses, right, on confrontation and learn how to properly deal with this stuff and really practice it. You know, and have, you know, people to actually work through this stuff with, right? But because they do have, there's whole courses on it, right? Because, you know, if you can learn how to do that, which most people should learn that as a young child and then be able to carry it on into their adult lives, right? But if you grew up abused, that's just not the case for many of us, you know what I mean? So that's why it's so important because, you know, I almost self-sabotage all the time because of this issue of conflict resolution, you know, and it's bad, right? That's horrible. So that's what I'm saying. It's very important for us to look at this stuff, be honest with ourselves, and then get some help with the areas that we need help in, right? Because we're just end up hurting ourselves even more than we've already been hurt, you know, or we become abusive ourselves, which I know that I'm not, you know what I mean? Because I just made a decision many years ago that I didn't want to hurt people, you know, that I wanted to be a decent person on this planet, not an abuser. So I made the changes I needed to make in that area, so I don't have any problems with that. But I do have a lot of conflict resolution issues and conflict at the workplace, conflict anywhere in my life, right? I have a huge problem with it, and it's just from being so beaten into a corner as a child. You know what I mean? And you know, it's like when you can't even come out fighting from that. You know what I mean? You can't. As a young person, I did try, and I came out fighting. You know what I mean? As a young teenager, you know, not with my parents, just out on the streets. And so, you know, that's the whole issue. You know, you're backed into a corner as a small child, and if you continually, you know, abused, you're going to have problems. You know, so this is the thing. It's very important for us to get help. You know, like honestly, it's not our fault. This stuff is not. It's not my fault that my parents did not teach me anything that I needed to know that was going to be positive in my life to get me through this life, you know what I mean? Except for how to kill myself, or that I should hate myself, or that I was a bad kid, or that I didn't deserve to live in the first place, or that I was ever going to amount to anything. You know, this was the things that I heard growing up, especially even as a teenager and a young adult. So, you know, it's like, well, certainly didn't deserve that. That's not my fault. Those two monsters decided to treat me that way, and my other siblings. But what's done is done. Can't go back and change it. So now, really, ultimately, it is up to us as adult survivors, you know, to make the changes necessary and realize that, hey, we didn't deserve that. It's not our fault that happened to us. But the whole issue is it is our fault now if we don't reach out and get help. That's where the issue lies. Because as adults, it is our responsibility to do what we can to help ourselves to you know, get through this stuff, right? So we have to take this on ourselves, right? And take the responsibility on. Our behavior is our responsibility. My behavior is totally my responsibility. So if I'm going to be abusive, I'm going to be no better than my stinking parents who taught me how to be abusive, right? I can have the choice. I can either choose to abuse people, or I can choose to be a good person and just be assertive and, you know, and just a good person on the planet. And that is our choice. And that's why people just continue to abuse, because they're making the choice to do it. And that's the problem, right? It is a choice, totally it is. So he says, anger can be a catalyst. He says, Anger can even actually serve as a gift to others, which can increase the potential for closeness in your relationships with them. He says here, this occurs because when you respectfully share anger or any of the emotions you experience, you have taken the risk to become vulnerable with another person. As a result of this, you have invited them into your space to dialogue with you about the issue or situation that has triggered your feelings in the first place. This is the road to trust and intimacy. And see, that's where my problem is, right? Because it does set you up for vulnerability. Like the minute you do something like that, you have made yourself vulnerable to that other person, right, or to whoever it is, right? And because if they're in your space, you've opened up this space, to them in order to correct the situation. And so it's probably very much a trust issue with me, and that I just don't that I think the outcome is always going to be bad, right? Because that when you grow up abused, the outcome is always bad, right? So that's the whole issue, right? Dealing with bosses or things that come up. I've had to, deal with bosses. I mean, everybody kind of does at some point have to deal with upper management or bosses, that are coming down on you for something, and then, they might say something that you don't agree with, and then, of course, they send you out of their office, and then you're like, okay, well, where's my say, And then you start to fume about it. About 2 weeks later, you're fuming mad, ready to quit. Or even 2 days later, and then it's like, now what, right? So generally, then, I'd have to call a meeting, and it's like, okay, I don't appreciate what you said. I would always tell them what they've done. I would write letters to the head people, demanding apologies and everything else, right? Because I'm tired of being abused, you know what I mean? I'm really sick of it. And so it's like, no, we don't deserve that, right? But there's ways to handle it without becoming abusive ourselves or quitting our jobs, right? So that's the whole issue. It was just always the issue that I felt that the outcome was going to be bad. So because anytime there was confrontation in my home, it always ended up bad, right? And that's why I think it's just these things that are triggered, they're just these behavioral things that we take on from childhood. A lot of it, horrible, absolutely horrible. So we got to make sure that we do, learn how to deal with this stuff, right? The second foundation, anger is not the same thing as hostility, cynicism, withdrawal, aggression, abuse, or violence. And Dave Decker says here, this is an especially tough idea for many people to grasp, especially if you have grown up in a shaming and abusive family or experienced bullying, ridicule, and humiliation at the hands of others outside your family during your childhood, or if you yourself behaved in these ways with others. He says one of the most important steps in learning to experience and express your anger differently is to break this mental equation between anger and abuse. Anger does not equal cynicism, hostility, aggression, and violent behavior, nor does it equal punishing emotional withdrawal like sulking, pouting, or ignoring. The emotion of anger is not what I was talking about in the examples in the first paragraph of this article. Those behaviors are in reality distortions and perversions of anger as an emotion. They're distortions and perversions of it. Anger, the emotion, is very different from this. So we have to. We already went through this stuff on shows like about 2-3 weeks ago. What anger is, what anger isn't, perversions of anger and whatnot, distortions. Really interesting information. If you haven't checked this out, make sure that you do. It's so interesting. That anger, that abusive anger, hostility, cynicism, withdrawal, aggression, abuse, or violence are distortions of anger. Right? They're just distorted and perverted anger as an emotion. So anger is not that. That's not what anger is. So it's important that we know what anger is and what anger isn't. The third foundation, how we express anger, is learned primarily from important people in our childhood. Frustration does not automatically lead to aggression, despite much of what has been espoused by experts in the past. Recent research clearly indicates that this is not even true in the animal kingdom, which is where this way of thinking arose. How you express our anger is not simply an instinctual or biochemically determined process. In fact, the most important part of how we express anger is learned. This is not to say that there are not genetic predispositions to depression, anxiety, irritability, and other emotional states, but how you express and act these out is clearly related to what you have experienced in the living of your life. He says one way to think about this learning process is to start to realize that the family where you grew up is literally like a laboratory where you learned how to be a human being. And if anger was acted out in a harmful, punishing, or disrespectful way in the family where you were raised, you had powerful role models who essentially molded how you experience and express your anger and how you look at yourself and the world around you. And the same is true of your experience with peers and others, even strangers in your childhood. If you were picked on, ridiculed, or bullied as a child, or if you did those things to others, you were also given messages about anger and dealing with other people. So he says, when you respond in ways similar to what you saw or experienced, you are living out a destructive life script that was written for you by the important people in your environment. And he says, but this script isn't written in stone. It can be altered, and you are the one who has the responsibility for doing just that. So when you slow down and actually think about what you are experiencing and doing, you can begin to intervene in the escalation process that for some ends in disrespectful, punishing, or abusive behavior. See, we don't have to continue that cycle on, right? That's that whole, we went through and we were looking at this, the shame-rage connection, and then the life script, that our families and parents, really our caregivers, wrote these life scripts for us and expected us to play them out. So if we're that abused kid in the corner cowering and just being subservient to their every whim, or trying to be the stay out of trouble or whatever, and just not say anything, right? These are these life scripts that our parents or caregivers would write for us, and so other family members, siblings, and everything. I hope you will go check this out. There's a whole section on the shame-rage connection, and it actually talks about a lot about the life script that we all are expected to play. And I was talking a while back, this must have been at least 3 weeks ago now, but I was talking about that, and I said, or 4 weeks. I said, I tore up my life script that my parents and family members wrote for me because it was so ridiculous that they would assume that I would continue to live that life script. My siblings now, I've only got 2 left, out of 7, there's only 3 of us left. And my 2 siblings expect me to continue to play out that garbage life script that my parents and they wrote for me so long ago. What a joke. You know what I mean? My siblings were abusive to me too, so it's not like they were just trying to help me and very protective. They've never tried to protect me in my lifetime from anything. They've actually never tried to be decent to me, really. They just want me around if they want. Like, my sister wants me around just to be like, she's a codependent, so she only wants me around if she wants to go shopping, but she doesn't really care what's going on in my life or care that, that I'm actually on my healing journey and what I'm doing, right? She kind of just uses people, right? Whatever. She's a nice person, but honestly, she doesn't care about you. She just cares about what you can do for her, which is spend time with her. She just needs like a robot, just somebody to just go do something with, you know what I mean? Because she's lacking in that area. But the thing is my dad was mentally ill, right? So we're probably all lacking in some area. But the thing is my bro expects me to play out this stupid life script too. And he's 16 years older than me, 17 actually. And they all had this idea of how I should continue to play out this role that my parents had created for me, which is garbage. And, I said it myself. I'm like, no way. I tear up that life script. I'm not playing it anymore. And I don't care who doesn't like it. This is my life. And I can heal if I want to. I can move forward if I want to. I don't have to continue to live in that dysfunction and that garbage and denial. If they want to stay in that denial and the garbage and the dysfunction, whatever. That's their life. They have to live it, right? But I decided clearly 4 years ago, really, that I was going to start my healing journey and allow myself to heal. And, hey, if they're not on there with me, if they're not in it, that's not my problem. Honestly, that is their problem. If they don't want to allow me to change my life script and look at me for who they should see me, which is, first of all, a sibling who needed them at such a heavy-duty time in my life when I was just experiencing so much abuse in the home and they were not there for me, and that now, as this adult person, they're still not here for me, and yet they would expect me to continue to play out this role. I mean, it's kind of garbage. Like, when you think about it, that is ridiculous that people do that to each other. Thing is that they're not very bright. They don't do any kind of reading. They don't do any kind of looking at this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, they just sit around and just assume that everybody should just do what they think they should be doing, which is absolutely ridiculous. You know what I mean? So there's no respect. There's no love. There's no kindness. You know what I mean? There never was, and there never has been. And they expect me to stay in their dysfunction? I don't think so. Not my mom is gone 15 years ago. She passed away. And my dad's still living, but he's 87, and I have very little contact with him, and that's good, right? Thing is that, even my siblings and other few family members that are remaining expect me to continue to play out that script, right? And it's like, no way, I'm done with it. I tore it up. I'm writing myself a new life script, which is a good one, right? And so it is ultimately our decision, right? We have about a minute left here. We'll continue this tomorrow morning, same time, same place. And tonight I'm on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, so if you want to tune into that, that's cool. On Blog Talk Radio here at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be on for an hour tonight, Elizabeth Brawley and myself. And so, thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. Be sure and check this out, www.angerresources.com. There's some good info on here. And if you're having troubles and you just don't even know how to cope, and you're just like, man, I don't even know how I can cope and deal, you make sure you stick around and you call a crisis line. You call somebody. You know what I mean? If you can't get a hold of someone or a friend, or you can't get a hold of someone to talk to, and you just feel that you can't do it, well, I'm telling you right now, you get some help. And you don't allow yourself to be beaten by this. You know what I mean? Like, we deserve to have a good life. We deserve to win this fight. And I know I made a commitment to myself, and I hope that you will do the same thing, to stick it out and to win this fight, because I'm doing it. And it's like, I hope I can drag as many people along with me as possible, right? So make sure that you do reach out and get some help. And just, keep on looking for that help where you can get it. Call 911. If you have to, call a crisis line. There's all kinds of crisis line numbers. Make sure you reach out and get some help, and never give up. Never, ever give up. So have a great day, everybody. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.